The year was 1979. Margaret Thatcher had become the country's first female Prime Minister. The average UK house price was £13,000. Widnes beat Wakefield in front of 92,000 fans in the Challenge Cup final. And Birkenshaw had just completed their first ever season in the West Yorkshire League. Momentous for only a few, but the few would know that they provided the platform for special moments, family bonds, lasting friendships, memories for so many. Guy Lincoln takes us back to them early days of the club.
The club started like most amateur rugby league clubs really. It started as a bunch of mates talking about playing rugby in the pub. I was recruited by one of the key guys from that stage, which was Malcolm Ackroyd. Malcolm and John Simpson were two of the guys that really kind of brought that together. Then there was a bunch of mates really. There was Alan Mitchell, there was Wally, there was Maggie, there was Mick Simpson. That kind of bunch of lads just got together and started to play rugby on what turned out to be a Sunday morning. The facilities we had were rudimentary, to give it its best possible description. It's impossible to sound like anything other than one of Monty Python's Four Yorkshiremen when you talk about it. You know, we did get changed in a scout hut, or was it a village hall? I'm not quite sure. We did get washed in cold buckets of water, and there wasn't even one bucket each. And we did play on a pitch that was 4 miles from our home pub. So, you know, the playing was tough. The challenges that we faced on a Sunday morning, as I mentioned, were difficult, but it was great fun and everybody enjoyed it. As we got ourselves a little bit established, first couple of seasons, that kind of camaraderie that brought us all together, that kind of sticking up for one another and getting stuck in and the whole team thing, we weren't probably the best players that had ever played rugby, but we really had a whole team ethic going and we really stuck up for each other. After a while, though, that becomes so that it's not really enough to keep you going as a team and as a club. And we had a nomadic existence. We moved around different pitches. At one point we decided we'd move from Sunday morning rather, to Saturday afternoon rugby because the rugby was a better quality and we weren't going to get bashed about quite as much probably. But we still struggled a little bit, and on the point of perhaps looking at folding, and like a lot of rugby, you know, amateur rugby league clubs come along, bunch of mates start a team, managed to last 2 or 3 years, and then a couple of players become unavailable. We reached that point, and it was at that point that we were lucky that we had a bunch of guys in the back room. There was David Lincoln, Eric Cross, Brian Elmsley, Bob Predith, other guys that we could talk about, who really sort of pulled that club together at that point. And it was probably their intervention, together with Phil Stead as coach, that really kind of established the club as a proper entity that could look after itself. So at that point also, we, through the intervention of David and Sue Lincoln, we managed to secure our own field. We managed to get a facility that was our own. And we managed to, again, through some great guys, Wally in particular, Phil Stead again, we managed to build some changing rooms. So we actually had our own facilities, our own field, which for a junior rugby league club of that status was pretty unheard of. There'd be teams that had been around for years who didn't have those kind of facilities. And at that point, we were then able to start recruiting better quality players.
Good evening, Birkenshaw Rugby Club. How the bloody hell are you all? It's certainly been a few years since I've had a few beers with you guys. Hopefully over the next year or so I'll be tripping back to Yorkshire, and I'm sure I'll call in and have a beer with you all. I've got asked just to say a few words on this wonderful evening you're having, celebrating 40 years of the rugby club. I got asked to name a few memorable moments, a few of the best players I've played with, and just anything that came to mind. Firstly, I don't really want to put names to names because there have been some great players over the last 40 years who have actually pulled on the old blue and white jersey. There's also been some shit ones as well, but you know that. The most memorable times, I think, was when we moved from Birkenshaw Middle School, which was my first game I played there. I think I was about 7 years old, and well, maybe a bit more. But we moved from Birkenshaw up to Cross Lane, sorted our own pitch out, levelled it, took all the stones and all the crap off the field, built our own changing rooms, and really a time when the club really excelled. The only people I will name over that period who were phenomenal for the club was the likes of Phil Stead, Eric Cross, the legendary David Lincoln, and of course the man behind the bar, Billy Armitage. So there's a free one for me, Billy, next time you see me. Have a good evening, gents. I hope to see you soon. Have a great night. And when Come On Eileen comes on, do an extra bit for me. Cheers.
We've now got a club that is pretty well established, that has, it's a decent bunch of players playing now. We've managed to get ourselves established in the Pennine League on a Saturday morning, on a Saturday afternoon. We're no longer getting our heads kicked in the West Yorkshire League on a Sunday morning. We're playing decent rugby on a Saturday afternoon. We've got a bunch of guys that know what they're doing. We've got our own facilities. We've moved from the bottom division in the Pennine League. We've moved up seven divisions to get to the top division in the Pennine League in 10 years, which is a pretty fantastic feat. And it's at that point that we start to develop a junior section. So some of the guys, Morton Robinson, Grant Robinson, Mick Tolson, coaching a junior section which has, from that point, produced 3/4 of the team that has gone on to play. Establishing that setup at Cross Lane with all those facilities and everything else really helped us to set the groundwork for the club that we are today. So that kind of core groundwork, those foundations that were built by the sort of pioneers, if you like, is what has established that club and what makes it able to do what it can do today and what it is today. It's all come from that starting point.
I joined in 1990 after an advert in the Telegraph and Argus asking for open age players. Came along down to the club, came to a meeting, and then got involved pretty much straight away, playing under the guidance of head coach at the time, Mark Parry, who was also a player and former Halifax prop. Fantastic guy, some great characters around the club, lots of ex-pros, Phil Smith, another guy. I think the club was in a little bit of a transition period at the time whereby the older generation was starting to retire. They'd hit that age, and the club needed a fresh influx of people coming through. And that year, I think there were 3 or 4 of us. Carl Winterburn, a guy who went on to play for Bradford Northern, Jason Brooksbank. So yeah, we came in 1990, never looked back. We reached our first Bradford Cup final in the season of 1994 under the guidance of then coach Mick Parrish. We lost out narrowly to Clayton at Dudley Hill. But like I said, that was the first major final the club had reached in its history up until that point. As I think with all amateur rugby clubs, the player retention is something that's difficult. We lost players for various reasons. The club went through a very torrid time, to the extent whereby I remember being sat in the Golden Fleece down the road, which was our headquarters back then, with 10 players and an away trip to Dodworth down in South Yorkshire, and sitting there and having to make the call as to whether we travelled to fulfil that fixture with 10 players or we withdrew from the league. Thankfully, the 10 people that were there that day stuck their hands up. We went down. We got a caning, which was to be expected, but we managed on the back of that to see out the rest of the season and start the rebuilding process after that.
Dublin away, what an absolutely fantastic trip that was. Absolutely brilliant. Maybe
not for me personally because I was dropped for that game, but I still enjoyed a good trip with the boys nevertheless. I think we met at 2 o'clock in the morning on a coach. There'd been a ton of fundraising been done up ahead, the lead up to that, for obviously we needed to pay for the coach transport over to Dublin and things like that. So there was a lot of waxing going on and various sponsored things. So the club really came together and we had a fantastic couple of days. Got the result over in Dublin and kicked on in the Challenge Cup. Got a lot of media attention on the back of it, radio interviews, and I think that really pushed the profile of the club and attracted new players on the back of it.
I came from Dewsbury Moor as a junior and joined in the under-16s with players like Ian Stewart and my brother Brandon. We went through the juniors and then progressed to the second team and then first team from there. As my friend Richard Eseltine became head coach, and he said to me, "Oh, do you want to be secretary?" Because I was quite good at organising bits and bats. So I took over that, and that had been about 2002. And then just before Dublin, so out with the Dublin, out with the pathway through the Challenge Cup. Coach-wise, Richard left and then Martin Gallagher took over and we had a good season there. We managed to stay up. We had Nick Simpson in the side then and he really made a difference for us as a big, strong runner out wide. And then Martin left and Darren Collins took over, came from Clayton, brought a couple of guys with him. And that was a really testing time for the club, really player-wise. But we managed to win the Bradford Cup somehow that year. We managed to beat Queensbury in the quarter-final. Then we had a great win against Clayton in the semi-final, which Richard Eseltine was coaching. And he still allegedly got a bit of mud on his cap where he threw it on the floor. That day, he's still got that cap at home, apparently. So then we went to the final, beat West Bowling in the final, won the Bradford Cup for the first time, which was great for me because I'd already lost 2. So it was one of those things I thought would never happen. So it was superb to do that. And then at one training session, Mark Robinson turned up with a halo on his head, walked down the path. Luckily, we got quite a few guys training that day, and he said, "I'll take the team on as a coach." And really, from there, we shot forward with Mark's sort of leadership and his coaching ability. We really took us forward. Mark brought in some great players like George Flanagan, who's playing at the Bulls now, Neil Cherryham, that's played at Halifax and Keighley, and a few more lads as well that came and really bolstered the team, the Rowies and all sorts of people, so Clarkies. And we made a nucleus of really great players into a really good team with a really good coach taking us forward. And we should have done a lot more with that team, to be fair, but it was just one of those things. You would lose a game, it just happens. And that was about me done really as a secretary. You know, Redders had started the juniors by then.
I remember it was Mark Robinson that in a passing comment once to me said, "What you need here, Redders, is juniors," and that kind of lit a light bulb in my head, and that's where the juniors have kicked on from. Some people are mooting us as the biggest club in Bradford at the minute, and I can see why. We've got over 130 kids playing junior rugby league from ages under 7s right through to under 15s. We still have an open age team. We have a masters team for the old fogies that the minds think they can do it, but the legs are not willing. But yeah, going from strength to strength, we opened our new changing rooms up at East Biley 2 years ago. Took over an asset transfer of the land. There are big plans to develop that land up there further for more pitches. And to grow different sports in the community. We share the site with the football team. We've got archery up there. We're looking to bring on junior football teams so that the whole community is involved. It's not just about Birkenshaw Rugby League now, it's about inclusion for everybody.
When we had to move away from our previous home at Cross Lane, the juniors disbanded. They continued for a short period of time, but they had to disband when we lost our permanent home. So we moved up to East, but we moved down to the middle school actually for a period of time. And then we moved up to East Biley, where the juniors were actually based at the time. But we weren't able to get them to continue because of lack of interest, coaching, and so on. So we've had a turbulent time since then. We've had some good times as well. We've had some glimmers of hope, and we won the Bradford Cup back in 2013 when we beat Wibsey, which was a bit of a shock upset. Wibsey, coached by our former coach Jason Hurst, he'd been attracted and poached to go and play to coach for Wibsey, and it was his first big season, and they met with us in the final, and we managed to beat them 25-22. So that was a real highlight of the time during my tenure as secretary. I like a challenge, and that was certainly what I took on when I took over the secretary's role. And I had to deal with changing room floors falling through, leaking roofs, lack of space, nowhere to put things, no storage. Back in 2015, we set about trying to improve the facilities. We kind of formed a working party to try and make a difference to the facilities. So we approached the council, we spoke to Sport England, we spoke to the RFL, and it soon became quite evident that there wasn't a great deal of support for us. So we set about looking at how we might take the club forward, and one of the things that came quite evident was that we needed to be a multi-sport organisation. So we were quite fortunate at the time with that we were sharing a site with a local football team. So we opened up discussions with the football team, and we managed to get them to agree to combine forces with the rugby club, and we basically formed what's now known as East Biley Community Sports Association. That was all well and good, was forming the charity, but what we needed to do then was we needed to get some cash from somewhere. We needed to get some capital investment.
we were able to secure our first grant, which was a grant from Sport England for £50,000. So when we originally did the costings for the development, I think the first price was about £90,000 we'd estimated to build the 4 changing rooms that we needed. I think in the end the total cost came to around about £340,000, but we managed to secure just short of £400,000 to go towards phase 1. We delivered the new changing rooms with the help of, we had a bit of a godsend really. I don't know where he came from or who sent him to us, but we managed to find Andrew Walker, who was the brother-in-law of one of the parents, and it was a cold and wet Thursday evening in this very room, and somebody said, "Oh, my brother-in-law's he's involved with a facilities management company. I'm sure he might be able to help you out. Right, get him on board. Get it. We rang him. He came to the next meeting, and the rest was history." Phase 2 of the project, as we've titled it, is the creation of a third pitch on the site, and the further development of the facilities that are present there. So not only through the creation of a third pitch, but we're looking to improve the playing surfaces of all 3 pitches. We're in advanced stages around the planning and the design stage, in effect laying the foundations to in effect give us the stepping stone into actually being able to start having the conversations around sourcing the capital to make phase 2 happen. The dream is to create a grassroots community sports facility that the community can be really proud of.
8 years ago now, the club was on its knees pretty much. We'd got one open age team running, and Andy Redmond and myself. Andy Redmond started with just 5 or 6 boys, and he said, you know, he needed a hand. We needed to progress the juniors. We needed to increase that. So I jumped on board with him. My boys started playing. And within 7-8 years, we've now got 150 kids playing. We want the club to be a national conference team within 5 years. As Simon has alluded to earlier with the phase 2 development, we want a team that can match those facilities. And we've got these kids coming through. We've got some fantastic talent. We've got 3 or 4 boys in the under-15s that have been signed on for scholarships with professional clubs. And we want somewhere for them to be able to come and play at a decent standard. We don't want. This is still a hotbed of rugby league around this area. There's some really strong teams, and we want to be a part of that. We put in a lot of work in for the juniors, and we want to be able to keep them within Birkenshaw. We've also got the pups section now, which is the 3 to 5 year olds, which is fantastic to see the littlies coming through. But the idea is that once you've got them at that age, then hopefully, you know, the club it's a family orientated club, and we hope that they will buy into it and become part of that club. I'm hoping that we will have a team in the National Conference League by that time. We've got the backing, we've got the infrastructure to be able to do that. We will have the facilities to match that, and without a doubt, with the talent that we've got coming through the juniors, we will have the team to match that.
Hello, my name is Louis, and I'm 8 and I play for Birkenshaw Blue Dogs under 8s.
Hi, my name is Harvey and I'm 9 and I play for the Birkenshaw Blue Dogs under 10s. And when we're older, we are going to play for the Birkenshaw Blue Dogs under open age.
I'm just so proud to be a part of the club, you know, and to see the progression and where we're going, where we've come from, this little parochial village club, with the possibility of playing in these facilities that phase 2 are going to bring us, you know, and seeing our boys running around in those kind of facilities at a really good standard of rugby, competing with the Dewsbury Moors and the Dewsbury Celtics and Shawcrossers and teams of this ilk that have been around for 60, 70 years. We're going to be one of those, and I hope I'm still around to see it.